Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. So this video is going to be about the third house because I think the third house, there's always more to go into. This actually impacts us so much, really constantly, because yeah, the third house is communication. It's a lot of things. I'll definitely go over it, but thinking about the third house as the way that we develop our understanding, not just of how we speak, how we think, how we interact with people, though thinking is obviously a massive thing. This is our relationship with our environment and the way we process literally everything. So that's why I want to talk about it, not just because I'm a Gemini and I have Mercury and Venus in the third house, but I think we can always go deeper. And with this one, it can actually be incredibly helpful because if you look at your third house, even if you have no planets there, looking at the sign on the cusp can help so much in understanding yourself and how to better manage your thoughts. And I do offer personal natal chart readings and synastry readings. If you're interested in that, there is information in the description, but I want to talk about why the third house is like the key shaper of our reality. And that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but first off, I want to mention the way that the houses are truly a progression in our development. If you think of the first house as just being, especially the ascendant representing the moment of birth, the first house is who we are very basically and our relationship with that. And of course, these things develop as life goes on, but the progression, moving into the second house, very simply put, it's our relationship with existing within a body and having contact with materials and recognizing that some things can be ours and not ours, and like spatial relations, really. So when we get to the third house, this is where we start to process and understand and remember things. And we're always like bouncing things off of our environment. This can give us so much information, and the way that it's related to communication and social things, other people, we get feedback from other people, and that informs us so much. Sometimes we can take it as who we are based off of the way that other people receive us. But more so than that, if we're looking at our literal environment, depending on your personal third house, this can actually have such a strong impact on your overall well-being, and it is my intention to have this be a structured video, but here I go talking without looking at my notes once. The point that I want to make with this intro even is that these things are involuntary and they're things that we are so often not aware of, and they are impacting absolutely everything that we do because we are always processing, we're always thinking, and we're always taking in the information in a way that actually informs the opposite house, the ninth house. And the thing with the ninth house is that it's about our worldview. But the third house, it's like what we take in order to even have that worldview. But the third house is mutable. The ninth house is mutable as well, but it becomes more ingrained when it has deeper meaning and more of a philosophy and an understanding of life behind it. The third house is mutable in the way that our opinions can change based off of getting new information. When we think of something one way and it's our automatic understanding of it, and then we get new information and that changes our understanding of it, we're always processing new input against what we already know. So one of the questions with the third house that I think can come up easily is, why does our third house represent our relationship with our siblings? And not everybody has siblings, obviously, but our siblings can be the very first people that we interact with that sort of shapes not just our environment and our understanding of life, but our understandings of ourselves. But I think of this in the same way that we are communicating with our parents, interacting with our parents. The only reason why our parents are separate from our siblings in this way is because they have their own very significant impact. But if you don't have siblings, you likely interacted with other people your age when you were younger, and it's pretty much the same idea. But when it comes to actually interpreting your third house and figuring out how to make it work best for you, the sign on the cusp and the element of the sign on the cusp are going to be really significant. The element there kind of shows our priorities. If you're somebody with a water sign on the cusp of your third house, you might communicate not just with other people, but with your environment and the information you're taking in a more feelings first way, sensing things, feeling what people are not saying, even feeling the energy of the room. If you have a fire sign on the cusp of your third house, there can be more instinct and action taking place here. Maybe more of like a quick response, taking things in and reacting to them. Maybe even more focus on personal experience, on what it means to who you are and your understanding of it. You might learn best through action, through actually physically doing something, or even just movement. Earth will always filter things through practicality, sometimes sensuality or material understanding. You could focus on what is reliable or efficient, or the way that you learn or communicate could be a little bit slower, but you retain things and you think about them more deeply before actually responding. And your relationship with the actual physical environment around you can really impact your well-being based on how you feel about it. Air tends to be more social, cerebral, observant, conceptual. It's very responsive to conversation, information, ideas, and also other people. You might need a lot of mental stimulation in order to continue to feel engaged. And you could even process by talking itself or by weighing your idea against another person's. This is all just general. Each specific sign is going to have its behavior. And what that shows you is that the way that you think and communicate is taking the behavior, or like the character of that sign, and acting through it in combination with the rest of your chart. So even if you're an earth sign, if you have a fire sign in the cusp of your third house, you might talk or think in a more fiery way than someone might expect. So what you can do with this, just having awareness of what's going on with you in this area can be incredibly helpful, because number one, it can make you feel less weird if you don't understand why you even think the way that you do. And I've mentioned this with so many different topics, but here it's especially relevant. Our thoughts are not always our own. If we can be aware of where our thoughts are coming from and how they're actually affecting us, that makes the biggest impact of all. Say, for example, if you start paying attention to your thoughts more consciously and you realize that you're always tearing yourself down, number one, you're able to recognize and notice when you do that, and even just taking note of it can actually change a lot. And if we take a negative thought and we turn it around in a way that's actually constructive or helpful, at least doesn't make us feel bad, then you're building a mental foundation for yourself that's actually stable rather than confusing or scattered. And there's nothing wrong with having scattered thoughts. As you can tell, I have very scattered thoughts. But if you have that issue, the more that you can do to organize them, or more so than that, just get them out in some way, what it does is it reduces that mental buzz in the background. If you're somebody who has lots of anxious thoughts, just write them down. If you don't have somebody to tell them to, writing them down, it doesn't just make you aware of what you're actually thinking, but it can also get them out of your head so they're not bugging you so much. Because when a thought is recurring, it just wants to be acknowledged. It maybe doesn't want to be forgotten. Maybe you want to keep something in the back of your mind. But if you put it somewhere that you're going to be able to remember it, then you can kind of take that load off of your brain and free up some space. And I'm so curious, any other people with strong Gemini, when it comes to the amount of space that you have in your mind, do you feel like you have any control over what you remember and what you forget? Because I sure don't sometimes. When I commit something to memory, I can pretty much remember it forever, but very important things that I intend to remember, or something that I was just told, it can just slip right out. And I think that that's like our brain's way of trying to save up space, because there's always so much more potential information. Often the voice in our head is not ours. It's like an early authority figure. Maybe it's your mom or your dad or some teacher that you had that told you something that was really impactful and made you feel like you have to be super aware of that thing. Listen to the literal voice that you're hearing in your head. Whose is it? What does it sound like? Can you describe the voice? Is it yours? And if you can't hear it, that's perfectly fine. My point here is really just about awareness. The more that we can do to understand what's going on in our heads, the more that we have more control over our daily lives, what we're doing, and how people and places affect us. That's really the point with this video. I just kind of want to make us more aware of what we actually have control over. Because when we have recurring negative thoughts, I completely understand that sometimes it can feel like you just can't get them out. But at least what is better than having that thought is recognizing that you have the thought and maybe verbalizing it, maybe analyzing it, maybe feeling it if it's connected to a feeling, because often these things are connected to a feeling. But that's why it's important to see what sign is on the cusp of your house, because that's going to show you maybe the best way to actually process that. I guess I'll give more elemental examples. Like if you have an air sign on the cusp of this, maybe talking to somebody or just writing about it. Find some way to get the words inside your head out. But as I mentioned before, if you have a water sign, it might be connected to a feeling and you might need to feel it. Earth might take some sort of practical work or creating something tangible for yourself that actually feels like you're doing something with it. So it's not just in the back of your mind tormenting you. And fire, you might actually have to physically do something. Beat the thought up. I don't know. I'm actually mostly just curious about what you think about this because I only know my own mind, and my mind is I don't know. I don't even know what to say about it. But the biggest thing here is the voice in your head yours? Is it helping you? And what can you do to make it more yours and more helpful? Because we give everything but ourselves credit for really anything that's going on. Negative feedback loops, interactions that we have with other people. This is a huge thing because if we're set to communicate a certain way, then that happens automatically. Parts of these natural traits can be very beneficial. Obviously, it's your chart, it's how you're meant to be. But all signs also have like negative traits and that lower, more fearful version. And just looking at what's going on there and seeing how it shows how you receive information, how you process it. When somebody tells you something, do you see it visually? Do you feel it emotionally? Do you just analyze it? Do you even notice your thoughts? A lot of what I'm talking about is not necessarily a problem to fix. A lot of this is just identifying what we're like and kind of feeling validated in that. But I figure that everybody has some sort of issue with thoughts that tear them down or things that we do without thinking that are actually making things harder for us. Your thoughts start somewhere and the third house shows you where. But talking about the environment, how the environment impacts us. So when we're growing up and when we're in that developmental stage of the third house, we're looking around, we're noticing things, and things make us feel things. Tastes and preferences really come up here. And if you find that you're in an environment that's not what you'd like it to be, I know we can have very little control over that. But when we're children, we have no control over it. So sometimes we can even be informed by things like, say there was something you didn't have control over and it bothered you for some reason. That sort of thing can really stick with you, and it can make it so that anything that sort of reminds you of that can trigger this feeling of helplessness. For example, noise. Maybe think about what noises you especially hate, if you're the sort of person that has strong feelings about this, and consider if anything might have happened early on where you felt like you couldn't do something about it, and that feeling of powerlessness has continued on so that more innocuous noises might still bring back that feeling. This is totally just an example, but if you have your own version of this, I'd really like to know. This can be, I don't know, textures, colors, the shapes of things. It could really be anything, but these things really stick with us, and they don't stay in the third house. They can go to the 8th or the 12th, and that's why this progression of the zodiac, like around the chart through the houses, is so important. And I do have a video on cycles and emotional cycles, and it's all about the water houses, but I want to mention here that the entire zodiac is a cycle. And when we finish a cycle, we start a new one as a newer, fresher version of ourselves who has learned from the previous cycle. And why am I talking about this in a third house video? Because our thoughts are related to literally everything, and healing our relationship with our environment, that's a vague thing. But the most tangible way that I can put this is if you find yourself to be more productive in certain environments and less productive in other environments, or happier in some environments and less happy in others, really take note of what it is around you and how you feel in those different situations and places, because that can give you little tiny bits of information that can actually lead to something huge. And like I said before, I know we don't always have control over our environment, but we can always make little changes and at the very least know what to plan for in the future. But just think about like your desk setup. If you're trying to work on something, don't neglect what your desk looks like. I'm pretty sure it's scientifically proven that the neater and more organized things are, the more productive your mind is. And maybe that's not true for everybody. And if it's not, tell me. But taking the time to do little things like make our bed, tidy up, stuff like that, what it does, it not only like subconsciously signals to us that, okay, neat, work mode, all of that, but it shuts off that sort of nagging part in the back of our mind that might be thinking about straightening something or what you have to do next. But it's so personal to who you are and what you've found works for you. But the third house basically tells us what is around you is impacting you more than you might be consciously aware of. So do what you can to improve it. And then going back to the third and ninth house axis opposition, like I said before, the third house is basically informing the ninth house because we're taking in information, and then with the ninth, we are integrating it, getting rid of what doesn't work for us, keeping what does, and creating a belief system, creating personal wisdom, and ultimately our personal truth, our understanding of life and the meaning of life and what's important to us. But sometimes this can actually inform our interactions, the way that we receive what somebody else is saying, or our understanding of something in general. I kind of think of the ninth house as like our stored information that we're keeping for some important reason. And our beliefs are always going to inform how we act. So overall, having more awareness on this entire axis can help us not just with more practical things, but with those more unconscious reactions that we have, and the way that maybe certain people make us feel, certain topics make us feel, or little visual cues that we're not even noticing. If something means something to you, there's a reason why your brain decided to store that. And if you have a really strong reaction to something, analyze it. Go back, figure out where this might have come from. And yeah, we can't always just like remember everything, but we can make little associations. And sometimes if we just quiet our mind and trust it to bring something up, memories will arise, random things will arise, and maybe we'll be able to connect the dots. And maybe it'll take time. But what we're doing with the third house and ultimately the ninth house, we are taking in information, processing it, integrating it, and creating our own personal mythology. This is your story. This is who you are and your experience that nobody else could possibly have because it's your perspective. That's why the ninth house is so valuable, because everybody has their truth. Even if you don't agree with somebody's truth, it's still their truth because it's based off of what they've experienced, and you can't know that. But that's why I think the third house balances this so nicely, because it is so changeable. We're always receiving more, and we can change. If you have like Taurus or something on the cusp of your third house, maybe it takes more time for you to integrate new information. If you have a fixed sign, maybe you don't want to take in new information if it contradicts something that you firmly believe. And that's fine. It's just the awareness. That's really the point here, is be more aware of what's going on, not just within your mind, but around you and how that is impacting you in all of the different ways. So this has been a discussion and I've let it go all over the place. And if you are still here and listening to me, I appreciate you. And I'm definitely curious about your thoughts on this, because what is more personal than your own mind? Something that nobody else ideally should be able to really have control over, but so many things can just linger. And this is why, because it's our early environment that shapes us. This is what we tend to focus on based off of what happened when we were very young, learning to think, learning to communicate, learning to interact with our environment. It goes so deep, it goes so far back. And that's why I think the third house is such an incredibly important and significant house. It's not the same as the fourth house in that this is our emotional foundation, but this is our thought foundation. And if you examine your thought foundation more, look at the planets there. Look at the aspects to the planets there. And then go a step further and think about how you feel about that. And a step even further, embrace it and acknowledge that this is you. No matter what you've been through and all of the negative ways that our early experiences can impact our behavior forward, You are you, and you are special, and you're meant to be the way that you are, but you can be a better version of that with awareness. So know that you deserve clarity, but if clarity is unmanageable or you can't reach it, there's still nothing wrong with you. Even if your thoughts tell you that you're not worthy of things, you're not worthy of love, that you're not a good person, you are, and you do. And I just want the best for literally everybody. So this is what it is. It's just a little discussion, and I appreciate you and I love you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.